My latest previous YouTube presentation about myself was entitled, How I Became Interested in Plumbing. In that presentation, I described everything that happened to me both during and in the immediate aftermath of my quote-unquote lifetime first encounter with a clothes washer, including how I developed an all-consuming obsession with the washer. And I also related the intensity of my obsession with the washer to the level of obsession intensity on a particular object or subject, which is typical to that of autism and Asperger's special interests. I want to go on to describe how my interest in the clothes washer eventually broadened out and expanded to include the entire realm of plumbing, and then, beyond that, how my interest in plumbing manifested itself through the remainder of my growing up years, as I think I implied in my last presentation that I would be doing. But I have realized, after giving it a significant amount of thought, that presenting my interest in plumbing as it played itself out, apart from and independently of my interest, specifically in clothes washers, is going to be difficult without first describing just what it was that I liked about clothes washers and what it was that caused me to get so obsessed with my mother's clothes washer, specifically because everything I liked about the washer eventually transferred over to become everything I liked about the broader realm of plumbing, with a few dimensions and dynamics added on top of those that first existed in direct connection with the washer, while at the same time initially being limited to the comparatively narrow scope of the washer. So before I present the topic of how I grew up with my interest in plumbing, I am first going to present as a separate topic and in two separate video segments like my last presentation, what it was that I liked about the washer, independently of and apart from any specific experiences I had with the washer. So here goes. The one single thing that so obsessively enamored me about the washer was the fact that the washer handled its water so elegantly. I specifically liked all of the different ways in which water physically behaved while it was in the washer. Right away, my mother caught on to the fact that I liked to watch her load clothes into the washer. And so every time she used the washer, she took to the laundry room a small wooden stool that was normally used in the living room, and put this little stool in front of the washer and directly against the front part of the washer so that I could stand on the stool and look into the washer, with the top edge of the washer coming up to about the level of the upper part of my chest. From my perch on that bench, I was able to watch everything my mother did in the process of starting the washer. First, she would reach with her left hand over to the wall on the left side of the washer, where the two small hoses that came out from behind the washer were screwed onto the right and left side of a faucet-like metal unit on the wall of the laundry room, and she would pull down a lever that was located on this faucet-like wall appendage and between the connecting points for each hose. Then, with her right hand, she would turn a silver-colored knob that was located in the center of a dial on the far right side of the panel on the back of the washer behind the lid. She would turn that knob amid a series of clicks from the knob to a certain spot on the dial, and then she would pull the knob outward, at which point a stream of water would begin to pour into the washer at the 9 o'clock position on the left side of the round tub inside the washer. At first, nothing would seem to happen other than the water continuing to pour into the washer. However, after a short amount of time, a shallow pool of water would begin to collect on the bottom of the tub and around the agitator in the center of the tub. After that, the water would begin to rise higher and higher as water continued to pour into the washer. And during all of this time that the washer filled up, my mother would be loading clothes into the washer, adding a measured amount of laundry detergent, and doing everything else that she needed to do to prepare the washer to wash another load of clothes. Every time I watched this whole process happen, it was never far from my mind that this was the process that I had been hearing on that first day I had been in the laundry room while my mother had been loading the washer with the clothes that she had brought into the laundry room and then dumped on the laundry room floor in front of the washer prior to starting the washer, and that had I been standing on the bench and looking into the washer that day, I would have seen the exact same thing as I was presently seeing. Meanwhile, as I continued to watch the water pour into the washer, I would watch as the water level in the washer rose higher and higher. I liked to watch the flowing stream of water, but I was also enamored by the manner in which all of the water that was in the washer at a particular time lay in the bottommost portion of the tub, with its uniformly level surface resting at the lowest possible level in the tub in proportion to the amount of water that was in the washer at any given time, in a manner that was very unlike the behavior of a pile of solid material like clothing, which, when lying on the floor or in a container, had an uneven surface and consistency that retained a distinct shape and physical configuration without the aid of any containment barrier or any other such outside force or influence. Correspondingly, I was also enamored by the fact that the water in the washer did not seem to have a distinct shape in and of itself, but instead automatically conformed its shape to the shape of the container that held it. A third thing that I was enamored by about the water in the washer was that, unlike a piece of solid material, like a shirt or a pair of pants, for example, the water that came into the washer did not seem to be pre-divided into an indivisible unit, so that any water that was added to an already existing quantity was as one with that already existing unit of water as if it had existed that way from the beginning. Thus I noticed right away from these experiences of watching the water come into the washer during the washer's filling cycle that the water in the washer could not be quote-unquote cut or otherwise divided by an outside force in the way that a piece of clothing could be cut with a scissors or torn to shreds. As a side note here, I later on in my life did discover that a piece of water could be cut and broken and smashed if it were frozen into ice. However, upon melting completely, all of those broken ice pieces would once again be one piece without anything to show for what had happened to it while it had been a solid piece of ice. Thus, my mother could put her hand into the water in the washer and then pull it out again, and the water would rush right back to fill the space where my mother's hand had just been, and there would be nothing to show for the fact that a piece of solid matter that was foreign to the quote-unquote pile of water in the washer had ever occupied that water. But that brings me to still another thing that I liked about the water in the washer that seemed to make it magical. Whenever my mother would put her hand or a piece of clothing into the water, the surface of the water would undulate like waves in the ocean, just as the surface of the water in the washer continually undulated with the force of the incoming stream of additional water constantly hitting it. I also liked to watch the water in the washer continually ripple in waves along its entire surface as it was continually hit by the stream of water that was in the process of entering the washer. And yet, the entire surface of the water in the washer seemed to maintain a quote-unquote average, uniform level across its entire surface, which changed only in proportion to the steadily increasing amount of water in the washer. At the same time, I also liked to watch the steadily increasing water level in the washer, which I knew was getting higher in direct proportion to the amount of water that was in the washer. Along with this, I liked to watch the ever-shortening length of the stream of water coming into the washer in proportion to the distance of the surface of the water from the top rim of the tub in the washer. Now I need to explain something. What I am going to do right now spells the pattern for what I am sometimes going to be doing in future videos, where in some cases I will let other YouTube videos do at least part of my work for me. So to that end, I invite you to type into the YouTube search window the words 1979 GE washer, a video I made myself. and then watch that video which portrays an old-style GE filter flow washer in its wash cycle. In that video, you will see exactly what I am talking about when I describe the process of how, when the wash cycle begins, a steady stream of water pours out of a hole at the 1 o'clock position at the top of the inside of the washer, just below the lid. Without the filter pan in place, that stream of water simply falls into the rest of the water in the washer while at the same time hitting the back side of the agitator. But with the filter pan mounted in its proper position on top of the agitator, the water from this rectangular hole lands in the filter pan, and the oscillating filter pan causes the water that lands in the filter pan to go through all kinds of crazy flowing and moving and splashing motions as it falls into the filter pan and then flows through the tiny holes in the bottom of the pan. Somewhat harder to see, if it is even shown at all in the video, is the crazy manner in which the water falls off the bottom of the outside of the filter pan back into the washing area, for the centrifugal force created by the oscillating motion of the agitator causes that curtain of water that falls off the entire outer bottom edge of the filter pan to look like a woman's constantly flailing, billowing skirt. If you type into the YouTube search window other words or phrases such as GE washer, GE filter flow washer, or just plain filter flow, you will see thumbnails of videos uploaded by people other than me, of course, which portray other old-style filter flow GE washers that were manufactured from the mid-1950s doing the same thing. An extra note here. The flow in filter flow is spelled FLO. Now, getting back to my own presentation here. When I watched my mother's clothes washer, the filling cycle was fun in and of itself. But the filling cycle was only a preparation for the real fun that began the instant the washer had finished filling and the washer started agitating. For whenever the washer performed a wash cycle, I saw the very thing you'll see in all of those GE washer videos, including mine. This complicated process of the water in the washer first flowing out of one hole into one container, which in that particular case was the filter pan, and then flowing out of that container to end up where it had started, was an amazing process, and the more complicated it was, the more quote-unquote enchanted it was. Watching this process happening inside the washer during the washer's wash cycle was like watching the water in the washer take an enchanted kind of journey through a particular set of steps with more than one stopping point along the way. And this process was the most enjoyable part of the washer's wash cycle. Now, when my mother let the washer fill while she added the clothes, the filter pan naturally was not mounted, and so when the washer automatically started washing without the filter pan mounted, the stream of water came out of the rectangular opening and then fell straight down into the rest of the water in the washer. While this was interesting enough in and of itself, it did not feel as enchanted as when the filter pan was mounted in place, so that instead of the water coming out of the hole and then falling directly into the other water, it instead landed in the filter pan and then from the filter pan went down into the other water. This process with the water in the washer and the filter pan in and of itself made the washer seem like one of those Rube Goldberg systems where a ball goes through a conglomeration of mechanical equipment while either triggering or otherwise being involved in one effect after another until it finally emerges out the exit end of the quote-unquote system in some fancy, exotic manner, except that the washer did it with water. Now here again, I must stop to explain something very significant and important. This quote-unquote Rube Goldberg syndrome is at the very heart of everything that has always interested me about plumbing. For me, plumbing is all about the way in which pipes, tanks, pumps, and plumbing fixtures handle water and make it flow. This is the ending of my video. What I liked about the washer, part 1. Go to video. What I liked about the washer, part 2.